I was the first person in the world to 100% Silksong. Almost. But with near certainty, one of the first 10 to do so, reaching 100% game completion in just 3 days after launch, plus the cleanup that same day to get one of the first true 100% of everything in the game. In this entry of the Silksong Handbook, I'll be sharing some of my biggest learnings from the run with you, with a specific focus on the early game, dominantly Act 1, but these principles apply throughout the game, so they'll be useful to everyone. By the end of this video, you'll have a much better idea of how to effectively navigate the absolutely colossal world that is Farloom, what you can do to progress smoothly through the game, what mechanics you can exploit to keep yourself alive in sticky situations, and how to manage those maddeningly frustrating scenarios where a boss just keeps on beating you down dozens of times. Most of all, I have some suggestions that I think will help you get the most enjoyment out of the game, especially if it's still your first playthrough. I'm not going to go into any great depth on combat today, but I am planning a larger video that will show you a ton of useful techniques and strategies that will make you float like a butterfly and sting like a hornet, so keep your eyes out for that soon. In any case, let's dive in. Now I know I said this isn't a combat focused video, but I'll be damned if I don't call this out here and probably in every combat focused video until I burn it into everyone's brains. Use your tools. They exist for a reason and are not some finite resource that you need to save for some perfect moment. If you're some sort of needle purist and think tools make the game easy mode, you do you, but these things are super fun to use and some are absolutely cracked and remove so much of the frustration from general clearing from the game that you're doing yourself a disservice by not interacting with one of the core combat systems of the game. Even the earliest tools in the game are pretty solid, but I will say that the long pins are definitely one of the best early game tools you can get your hands on, as they absolutely whomp enemies while also being pretty cheap to upkeep the shell shards for. So for your own sake, start chucking some daggers, pins, or boomerangs. You'll thank yourself later. To that end, I definitely recommend mixing things up combat-wise, trying out new combinations of tools and also testing out each crest for yourself to see if the style gels with you before defaulting to looking up someone else's take on what the most OP build is, myself included. But you do you if you don't want to mess around with testing everything. I think the first 3 crests you're going to get your hands on are on a similar level in strength, and each is solid enough for platforming that at least one of them is going to become a personal favorite for you. As you get later into the game, the new crests change things quite a bit, and I personally didn't enjoy them much, mostly due to some being awful for platforming, but I'll be doing some more extensive testing of them later to showcase their full potential more properly. Wish walls are a great new addition to Silksong, and they're pretty much always worth completing the second you get them, so I highly recommend doing any new wishes you come across as soon as possible, even at the expense of sidetracking the main story objective. The rewards are great, and for the ones that require you to kill things and collect items, they serve as a quick way to knock out your hunter journal entries at the same time, so you kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and are less likely to have to kill a large excess beyond the required kill count for those respective monsters. Additionally, some critical game progressions actually require you to have finished enough wishes anyways, so getting a head start on these just makes sense. Finally, they're usually scaled in difficulty to the stage of the game you're currently at, so they'll be completely trivial later on in the game, but would have been completely fine to complete back when you first came across them, while still rewarding something very desirable like a mask fragment or silk spool piece, so just get them done ASAP. Another incredibly important thing to prioritize, especially in the early game, is needle upgrades. Your starting needle is definitely nothing special, and not having any upgrades on it will make the latter portion of the early game a lot more difficult. As soon as you've properly unlocked Bellheart, your boy Pointy is the first person you should be seeing so that you can get your first 2 needle upgrades above literally all other objectives. This is easily the most important thing you can do before starting Act 2 and attempting to clear any other new areas past Shellwood, so do not skip this. Alright, let's talk a little bit about traversal, since this is a game of exploration at its core, and knowing how to navigate Farloom efficiently will make a world of difference in your enjoyment of the game. While getting lost in the beautifully crafted biomes is part of the joy, it certainly helps when you've got a map to show you where in the world you are. If this is your first playthrough of the game, I genuinely believe that the compass is the best tool in the game for you to run, simply to help you get your bearings on each new region you explore. I'd like to believe I have a very good capacity for mapping areas by memory, but this game is on an entirely different scale than Hollow Knight and other metroidvanias, so trust me when I say this compass will be your best friend, and that you can quickly become lost without it during your first couple of passes through an area. Beyond that though, you're also going to be best off prioritizing finding Shakra as your main objective in any new region you enter, just to help get yourself oriented even faster. As soon as you start seeing her little rings on the ground, you know she's close by, and you'll start to hear her sing as well if she's actually in the area. Alongside buying her mapping tools right away. I was stupid and actually didn't buy the bench and bellway markers from her until I was almost completely done the game because I was under the impression that I had to place them manually for some dumb reason, even though that wasn't even the case in Hollow Knight. For the special custom markers though, like the little gold ones and silver ones and stuff, those ones you do have to place manually. So they're only going to be useful if there are certain things you want to explicitly mark on your map. So definitely buy at least the bench and bellway ones immediately so you don't have to work from memory where everything is. I know a lot of people will be thinking, okay, but then if I use the compass, I've given up a yellow tool slot that could have been using something better, but I genuinely think that the magnetite brooch is the only yellow tool I would slot over it if I had to choose between the two because I didn't have enough tool slots as a first-time player. Think about it this way. Every time you have to open your map to figure out where you are, if you didn't have the compass and it took you 3 seconds to triangulate your location, then that's a time save gain from the compass every single time, which is going to add up to quite a lot of time over the course of an entire run. If you don't care about having the map spoiled for you and exploring blind is simply frustrating for you, then by all means pull up an interactive map. There are tons of them online, but personally I think it ruins a lot of the joy stumbling upon neat secrets, so my suggestion would be to play the game normally and then use the map just for cleanup purposes, or at least disable all the markers on them until later on if you're going to use it right out of the gates. Yes, I know I'm kind of showing you some of these completed maps here in this video, but these are just being shown quickly in passing and you're hopefully not pausing to stare at the maps. My point is more around how the interactive maps will have markers for literally every single item in an area. Coming back to the magnetite brooch tool, I think this is one of the best early game tools you can run and would definitely recommend buying this as soon as possible as it makes exploration significantly faster and less tedious. Without it, you'll find yourself quickly scrambling along the floor trying to pick up all of those silly little beads, wasting tons of time and likely becoming frustrated by the process as well, so pop this bad boy on and let it do the work. If you want to go a step further and knock out larger chunks of rosary farming so that you don't have to think about them at all, you can check out my farming guide after this video, which has locations for each stage of the game. As soon as I put this thing on, I don't think I ever took it off again unless I was fighting a boss that I died to enough for me to bother with reallocating my tools for more of a combat focus on. Continuing with the theme of exploration, I think there's a case to be made for fully exploring each new area in its entirety before moving on to the next versus just pushing forward to new areas faster to rack up more abilities, since each core mappable area usually only has one big upgrade. Typically, I'm more of a clean sweep each area fully kind of guy, but there are a massive number of secret areas even in the first half of the game that are gated behind having multiple mobility abilities unlocked, so you'll find yourself wasting a lot of time having to pass through the same areas many times to actually get everything knocked out. Once you get to Act 2, you'll run into the same problems again. I'll talk more about those in a future video since we're talking about the early game here though. I think that you can absolutely get a lot of value out of being thorough in exploring the first 11 areas of the map to build up your total mask upgrades, silk spools, grab some useful tools and needle upgrades, but I would wait to do that until you've gained the wall cling ability before starting more thorough area sweeps. The one important caveat I will add here is that if you ever make it to Bilewater before Act 2, you shouldn't overcommit to finding Shakra here. It's simply not possible yet. I know that could technically be considered a spoiler, it's not really, but trust me, I'm saving you a lot of pain by telling you this. As you're exploring these new areas, you may run into those dicey scenarios where you're barely scraping by with a single mask of health just before a tough enemy, possibly even during a run back to recover your rosaries, and you're in too deep to commit to the run back to a bench, which would reset all the enemies anyways. So what are you supposed to do here? Well, you can do a nifty little back and forth movement between two distinct areas, and it should only respawn the trash mobs that are easy to build your silk back up against, like the little skull scuttlers you find in caves, making for an extremely easy heal to get you out of that situation. Additionally, any enemies that drop rosaries should definitely not respawn between scene changes, which makes for another interesting case of to bench or not to bench. If you're expecting to move around an area while extensively looking for collectibles, you're usually better off to avoid hitting a bench during a long sweep, just so you have less to worry about during multiple pass-throughs, and then you can just give those trash mobs some love taps to heal up if things get hairy. This is particularly helpful when you reach places like Sinner's Road. That being said, if you're about to fully commit to clearing an area and you don't intend to come back to it, save for potentially some new Wishwall quests that might bring you there, I would highly recommend you finish the Hunter's Journal entries for the enemies there at the same time. I had to do a lot of backtracking to old areas, and it was hard to remember where some actually were found originally because there's more than 230 unique bugs to bash in this game. This is by far the biggest grind of the game, but you'll save yourself a ton of time if you're intentional about knocking it out as you come across new bugs. I don't want to say anything too specific, but it also becomes more annoying to do this later in the game. If you're enjoying this video and are looking for more high quality Silksong content, including comprehensive lore videos down the road, then consider subscribing. You're in the right place. The flip side of this would be that you should 100% pay for any new bench and bellway you come across, even if you were saving up money for something more expensive in one of the shops, just to give yourself more options to work with in new areas and to obviously get back there faster in the future with the bellways. Also, if you're fast traveling to a different area, make sure at the very least to rest at the first bench you come across when you get there, so that if you die, you aren't being sent back halfway across the map for an even more embarrassing walk of shame than it already is normally. Now, this is going to be a tough one for some of you, but if you're playing on a controller and you've been using your analogs to move around, believe me when I say it will make a world of difference if you switch to your D-pad, not only for navigating Farloom's most challenging platforming sections, but also combat. This game was absolutely not made for stick input, as it literally only allows for 8 directions of movement to be read, and the level of control you gain from more explicit up, down, left, right movements from a D-pad is night and day once you get used to it. It has an especially large impact in helping with pogoing when you want to be sure that a down attack input is registered rather than a forward slash when executing quick movements, in situations where your analog might seem to be pointing down enough while diagonal, but in fact it's just a little bit too far to the left or right. The same goes for reading upward slashes. This will definitely take some time to get used to if you're not already doing it, but it will easily have one of the greatest impacts on your gameplay control above all other changes. If you're playing on a mouse and keyboard, that's equally good and provides the same, if not better, level of movement control, but obviously that may be inconvenient to switch to if you're a couch gamer, and this will take significantly longer to get used to going from controller to mouse and keyboard. Personally, I play on controller on PC as it just feels better than mouse and keyboard for me, but to each their own. Now, you've likely run into some scenarios early on where some bosses feel unnaturally strong and punishing. Anyone else try to fight this giant asshole ant before getting dashed like me? In some cases, that may actually be true, and it could be a sign that the game just wants you to acquire something else before taking them on. I'm also looking at you, Savage Beastfly. If you're getting to the point of dying to a boss dozens of times without feeling like you're getting any closer to beating them, honestly, just come back to them another time. I know I suffer from the curse of beating my head against a wall until it works, but it was honestly a mistake with some of the bosses I fought, and I should have grabbed a needle upgrade or another mobility skill that would have almost trivialized the fight if I had fought them after that, saving me some immense frustration as well, probably. Even if you could have actually beat it with the tools you had and your needle was as strong as it could get, a lot of the time the actual cure to being hard blocked by a boss is just take a break and let your brain figure out how to beat it in your sleep while you grab a drink of water, go to stretch, or just explore another area before you come back. I know this sounds kind of ridiculous, but it legitimately works wonders, and our brains are wired in a way that makes this work. I know it feels bad when you've seemingly admitted defeat, but just treat it as a training arc, knowing that you're simply getting stronger and that you're going to get your inevitable revenge in the near future. The same just goes for any area where you feel like you should be able to get higher on that platform, or you see the other side of a door but just can't figure out how to get there no matter how many times you run through the area. Honestly, just come back another time. You might happen to just stumble upon that broken wall or secret path that gets you there, or you indeed did need another power to make it happen, but a little break is often the best solution. If your response to this suggestion is, screw you, I'm going to beat this boss no matter how long it takes, I'm rooting for you. I believe in you. While the game may seem like it's not giving you too much to work with when looking at the maps, there is at least some critical information they convey on each one to help give you some guidance. For any silk power or crest, you're almost always able to infer where it is by looking for some sort of structure on the map, even just by looking at the outline before you fully explored the region. If it isn't a power, then at the very least it's going to be a point of interest and will always be worth stopping by when visiting an area for the first time. This next one may not be the case for everyone, but I feel like I see it more often these days where people are impatient and will just spam through dialogue to jump back into the action, and I get it. It's fun to run around and hit bugs with the needle, especially if you don't have too much time to play games these days. But this game is so rich with dialogue that helps build the world of Farloom, and I think you'll have a significantly greater appreciation for the game if you take the time to actually listen to what the bugs have to say about the events happening around them. There's a ton of extra dialogue lines you can get by visiting important NPCs after major events in the game that you can completely miss if you just zoom through things too quickly. So getting in the habit of seeing your favorite bugs often will be worth it, and in general, it can also just help ensure you're getting every quest that you can as early as possible, which will directly help your playthrough when it leads to powerful rewards. Beyond NPC interaction, there's a ton you can learn about the world just from reading journal entries from the bugs you kill, from signboards and stone tablets on the road, and from lore items that you pick up. I'll share more about lore related things when I cover the mid to late game another time, because that's when things really start to get spicy. At the very least at this point, do yourself a favor and stop to smell the flowers every once in a while before you go and beat down another bunch of bugs into a pile of goo. I'll probably cover these next ones in more depth on a comprehensive platforming entry to the handbook, but if you weren't already aware of this, you can pogo off of most spikes in the game to save yourself from a spiky demise. This doesn't work on every type of spike in the game, but it does for like 90% of them, so if you want to pull off a clutch save during some sketchy platforming that would have left you dead in the water, then start giving this a try and it'll soon become a muscle memory reaction for you. Bouncing off of enemies with pogoing is also just one of the best safe combat techniques you can master for dealing damage against ground-bound enemies. Just make sure you know if they have a jumping attack and a tell for it so you know when to back off. Another quick one that I personally haven't made much use of but is worth noting is that there is indeed a down dash you can do now with a simple down and dash movement input. This can be useful to throw into the mix when a projectile's coming your way, but the natural pull of gravity doesn't feel like it would be enough to dodge it. I think it's rare to need to use this, but just keep it in your back pocket. The final movement trick that I have for you is that you can actually wall cling dash up a wall if you're already clung to it. But again, I found very few instances where this is actually useful, but thought it was worth mentioning in case you can find a place to make it shine. For the sake of keeping this video from being an hour long, I'm going to stop here, but I have dozens of things that I want to share about exploration, combat, platforming, and movement, and much more that I think could help new and veteran players alike in their journey through Farloom. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more content like this, let me know in the comments some specific things you'd like me to cover, or just drop a shaw to appease the algorithm gods. If you haven't watched that rosary farming video yet, I can pretty much guarantee there's no better farm in the game than what I've covered without using some sort of exploit to do so. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.